I mean, I would have loved to have been a player, first of all, and I tried to do that, but just didn't have that natural talent. I think I had the hard work, and I think if you're going to be successful in anything, it's that blend of those two main qualities. If you've got the ability, you've got that natural talent, and then you have to put with that, the work ethic and the desire to be successful. From my own point of view, it's the path that I came through. So quite an early age, I realised that I wasn't going to be at the level to be a professional player. So I embarked on another pathway that could hopefully lead to a career in the game. So initially I went to obviously GCSE A-levels and then university, sports science degree, and then I did a postgraduate certificate of education as well. So my first full-time career was as a PE teacher. I think that gave me a fantastic foundation in what I was going to do later in my career as a coach and as a manager. But alongside that, I was also coaching qualifications and then gathering experience, first of all working with young players, and then that led on to working at senior career as well. But I certainly feel it gave me the confidence in lots of different areas to be able to do what I did up until this point in my career. I mean, I would have loved to have been a player, first of all, and I tried to do that, but just didn't have that natural talent. I think I had the hard work, and I think if you're going to be successful in anything, it's that blend of those two main qualities. If you've got the ability, you've got that natural talent, and then you have to put with that, the work ethic and the desire to be successful. But I was always very open-minded, and that would be my best advice I could give to someone like starting out. The importance of not just education when you're in your late teens, early 20s, but that lifelong learning approach. So I think I'm a keen learner still now, and maybe a better learner now than I was when I was younger. Because I think when you're younger, there are a lot of distractions out there that can prevent you from your academics, because you want to be young and enjoy being young. But I still spend a lot of time reading, whether that be specifically about sport or football, but also into business, successful stories about people that have done really well in the business side of life, and also getting out there, meeting people, networking, learning all the time, because in any industry, whether it be football or business, things don't stand still, they move forward. So even the way I've coached in the last year would have been very different to the way I coached 2, 5, 10 years ago, and it will continue to evolve and develop, and it's very important that you don't stand still. It's had a huge impact, and if we think about the teenagers and young people of today, were brought up in the internet generation where social media is very much part of their everyday life, and it wasn't like that 10, 15 years ago. So it has been a massive change, some of it good and I think some of it not so good. On the good side, the wealth of information and the way that knowledge flows now is absolutely incredible, and I do use social media to keep up to speed, fast, real time with news that's breaking, and that's very powerful. At the same time, I think it's given a platform for certain individuals that abuse it, and they don't deserve really the right to have it because of the information that they're moving. You take some of the racial abuse, for example, some of the players have been receiving recently, and there's been a big debate about that. Fortunately, it is a small minority, but something does need to be done about it. I think from a manager's point of view, there are a lot of negatives about social media, because when I was growing up, I always had a lot of respect for coaches and managers and people in those positions. I wouldn't dream to say anything negative to them, but now you get fans that try and contact managers directly, very abusive, and for me that's not a positive thing. But there are lots of positives, and like anything in life, you have to evolve and you have to adapt. My job was to focus on developing the team and getting results. But the other departments have a very, very important knock-on effect to the performances on the pitch, because finances and the income of the club and the business of the club ultimately affects the talent that you have available at your disposal, and will help you or not help you with winning games. So yeah, it is important to understand it. And I think it's also what the club expects of you as a manager. I think the old style manager who had very much control of all aspects, who was being recruited, how much the transfer fee was going to be, how much that player was going to get played, those days are gone. There are experts in place now that will deal with those side of things, and then the coach will specifically deal with preparing the team for games. I certainly found making the change from being an assistant to a manager, the difference in pressure is huge, because when you're the manager, you're making a lot of the big decisions. Of course, you have people around you that will support you, and often they're giving their advice or opinion, but there has to be a decision maker, and the ultimate responsibility is with that decision maker. So you're making big decisions. How you play has a big effect on how you feel, if you win, if you lose, if you draw. In my opinion, the head coach or the manager will feel it more than anybody. They'll feel the high and the elation of success and winning, and will feel the deflation and the bad feeling more than anybody when you lose, more than any owner, fan, player. That's my view on it. I know everybody's different. Mental health is a topic that's spoken more openly now, because there've been some very honest people that have been brave and have come forward and say, this is an issue that I've had to deal with. And a lot of people hide it, because there's a certain stigma attached to it, that if you are suffering with these kind of issues, that you're weak. And the last thing that you want is, as a manager, leader and a coach, for there to be a perception that you're weak. And a lot of people would not even put you in that position if that's the case. So I can understand why managers, coaches and even players would hide that. But it's certainly not the case. Anyone who has a real understanding of mental illness will understand that they're actually some of the strongest kind of people, because they're standing up to a lot of the fears that they have. So is there a lot of support? I think it's better, but it's way off what it needs to be, way off. Yeah, I've been in dressing rooms where the outside influences, media particularly, have spoken about, this is a dressing room where players are making decisions, and player power is a term that's used, and it just wasn't the case. I think it really depends on the way the club's set out and the leadership at the top of the club, whether that's the owner or whether that's the manager, because some managers like a very autocratic approach. It's my way or the highway, and some managers have been very successful that way. Others like a more democratic approach, where the players are involved in the decision-making processes. They're not responsible. Ultimate responsibility is still with the manager. But when that doesn't work, when that style doesn't work, and it does work, and I've worked with a manager who's been extremely successful working that way, but when it doesn't, the term player power can be used as, this manager doesn't have control of the dressing room, the players are making the decisions, when it's not really the case. So there are lots of different ways to lead. Ultimately the manager decides what way he wants to do that. If he's successful, normally no one will say anything, or they'll praise him for the way that he's been. If he's not, there'll be criticism, and those different styles will often lead to that. Of course, there are examples where there have been players in the past, or groups of players that are very, very powerful, and if they've not got on with a certain manager, results have not come, and then owners have made decisions. But I don't think it's the case necessarily that players have are making decisions at high level at club. I've been very lucky through my career, particularly the Chelsea years, where they've been a club that have historically changed managers quite rapidly and have been very successful doing it. When I was at the club, it was a bit of a revolving door. From my own selfish point of view, I was lucky because I got to see a lot of really top-class managers working very close up. Clearly, the one that I know best is Carlo Ancelotti. I was his assistant for 7 years, and I would say that he's, the person that's had the #1 influence on me, not only as a coach and a manager, but as a person as well. So I had a fantastic time working with him at 4 different clubs, and I even tuned in last night to watch his team beat Liverpool in the Champions League. So keep in contact with him a lot. Great mentor and also a great friend of mine. So I learned a lot of him. What did I learn? Well, so many things. And even when I stopped working with him and went on to be a manager of my own right, I actually had a telephone call with him and said, Carlo, I knew that when I was working with you, I learned a lot. But it's only now, since I've been a manager, I realised it was way beyond what I even thought, because so much of what I was learning was on a subconscious level, and I was able to, go back to it when I was in difficult times, mostly, and remembered the ability for how he kept calm, the way that he led the players in a very respectful way, how he had great knowledge, particularly of tactics. So I learned a tremendous amount from him. And I can go back through all the managers and just say, there's some really good things that I learned. I had a really good time, 3 months working with Gus Hiddink. He's someone that had fantastic aura and charisma. When he walked in a room, he had great language skills. And if I go back to that question you asked me earlier about what advice you would give to myself starting out, or a young person starting out in this career, I would say learn languages, because the Premier League now and a lot of the leagues, they're multicultural dressing rooms. You can expect to, especially in Europe, you can expect to have a dressing room where there's English spoken, French, Italian, Spanish, German. If you can master 2 or 3 of those languages, you're at a great advantage, because ultimately coaching and management is about good communication. I've always found it really, really difficult in the early days of going to work in France, Spain, not so much Germany, because there's a lot of English speakers in Germany. That frustration about not being able to get your message across, it's so key. So Gus Hiddink was a master of that. He could go from speaking English to Dutch to German to Spanish, and that was really impressive. Not from a showing off point of view, but the ability to really hone in on a human level with everyone in his dressing room. So that was great. I have to say, Jose Mourinho was someone that I respected a massive amount when I was at Chelsea. And even to this point now, I think he's been a fantastic manager and coach in this modern era. I've been lucky over the clubs that I've worked at, especially when I was an assistant at Chelsea, in Paris, Madrid and in Munich as well, that they were all teams packed with talent. I didn't actually coach Zidane. Zidane was an assistant alongside me to Carlo Ancelotti at Madrid, so it was great to work with him and see what he's gone on to do as a manager, but obviously a fantastic player. But all those clubs, amazing talents. I would say in 99% of cases, maybe even higher than that, 99.5% of cases, the players we work with are clearly great talents, but good people as well. So I often get asked about what's it like dealing with the egos of the big players. And I think, well, ego's important, because ego and confidence are very finely linked. And if you're going to perform at the highest level, under immense pressure, biggest games, a lot at stake, big crowds, a lot of intensity, a lot of scrutiny, then you need to have confidence, big confidence. Because if you don't, and you make a mistake, it's easy to crumble. Easy to crumble. So these are strong characters that are able to deal with the kind of pressure that the general, normal person would never have to deal with. So I never had a problem with that. I respected the players for the amount of pressure that they were under, and I felt, well, you actually need ego and you need high confidence to be able to deal with this kind of pressure. Good people, hard-working, and if you take some of the very, very best ones, and I would put Ronaldo at the very, very top of that, closely followed by the likes of Ibrahimovic, Modric, Lampard, Terry. Well, what an amazing experience. I mean, I had the pleasure of working there for 2 years, and during that 2-year period, it's actually a period of great success as well. I think it could be a very difficult place to be if you're not successful, because the place is so demanding. But fortunately, I had a great 2 years there. When we were at Paris Saint-Germain, we first got the idea that Carlo might get the opportunity to go to Real Madrid as head coach, and it was like, wow, this is like once in a lifetime opportunity. And then you're just praying that it's going to happen, because there's a lot of ifs and buts, whether PSG would let him go, whether Real Madrid would change their mind. In the end, it happened, and he asked me to go with him. Knew it was a big club from the outside, and the history and the players that have played there. But it wasn't until I actually walked in the doors that I saw what it was like. It was pretty much, it was jaw-dropping really. One of the first things they did is take you into the boardroom, and at that time there were 9 European Cups on show. No other club has got near that. So that was first of all there. Then going around the stadium and getting a feel for what it was like, and obviously turning up on the first day, training ground, and then the players are walking in and you're seeing them. It was absolutely amazing. Everywhere we travelled, all around Spain, Europe and the world, it was incredible with the fans. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. So, just a wonderful experience. And also working abroad as well, in a different country, different culture, climate. It was a really special 2 years. And when you're in it, it becomes very normal quickly. It becomes, what you do. You get up, you go to the training ground, you work, you travel to different stadiums, you play. And you don't really realise some of the time where you actually are. But looking back, it was amazing memories. The five big leagues in Europe, and I've been fortunate enough to work in 4 of those, Italy being the one that I didn't. Challenging mainly because of the language situation. So I didn't study languages at a high level when I was younger. It's one of my biggest regrets. And I found it much more difficult at a later age to try and to do it. I had to do it, so I was really thrown in at the deep end. So after he left England and went to France, it's like, well, here you are, you're in Paris now, and the majority of the dressing room are French speaking. So you've got to coach in French. So the planning. The detail of the planning went to another level for me. So I also spent a lot of time planning training sessions. But now I'm having to do it in another language. So the session plans I used to do in French. Obviously I was having lessons as well in the afternoons. And now I had to plan what I was going to say. So I had to learn the French before the training session. So there's a lot of instruction early on. As soon as it went 2 ways, it was more difficult in the early stages, but as you studied more, it became a little bit easier. So the language was a barrier, but again, through study, hard work, you get the rewards. I'm sure there's more that can be done. Clearly there's prejudice. It should be best in class should get the opportunity for the best jobs. And it shouldn't depend on whether you're British, from one of the European countries, from an ethnic minority, from whether you're white, what language you speak. It should be the best candidates. Whether the best candidates get the opportunities is another question. I've always felt that teaching and coaching are the same thing. Maybe some people argue that there's some slight differences. I don't know what they are, but for me, teaching and coaching are the same. So teaching, learning to be a teacher and then becoming a teacher was a great foundation platform to becoming a coach. The only difference was, in secondary school when you're coaching, you've got a very mixed ability classes and abilities that you're working with compared to stepping up and working with elite talent. That's arguably the biggest difference. But the teaching education that I had and becoming a teacher gave me a lot of skills in a lot of areas that are so important in coaching and management. Communication, without question, being the number one. The ability to be able to stand up in front of a group of people and instruct them in what you want. Also on a one-to-one level as well, very important. Organisation, very important. Planning, short-term, medium-term, long-term, vision, strategy. Loads of different things that were very, very beneficial, and I think put me in an advantage, whereas a lot of players that have played football all their life and then they're thrown into this environment where now they're coaches and managers, and they will never have developed those kind of skills because they've been part of a team and they've been constantly been instructed about what they want. Now the roles are reversed, and I think a lot of players find that challenging. My attitude was, I don't know it all. You can never be as clever or as intelligent as the pool of knowledge that you're in the room. So sometimes you have to say, I don't know that, but together we could solve it, or if I don't know, I'm going to find out. So that's the importance of being open-minded and not being a know-it-all, and that comes, being humble is important, and I think players respect that. Players do respect that. I think you have to have personality. That's for sure. You can't be a shrinking violet standing in front of, high-level professional athletes who want to win or who are competitors. So you have to be strong at times, and you have to make tough decisions, and you have to be willing to do that. You can't be weak, otherwise you get walked all over. So very important is to have personality, and one of the things that is really important is that ability to be able to grind and work, because game after game you have to be willing to put the hours in, because it's a never-ending cycle of planning, preparing, performing, analysing, debriefing, and go again and repeat and repeat. And sometimes it can become quite monotonous, especially if you're playing 60 games a year, competitive games. You have to have the ability to be able to just to keep doing that. And from the outside, I think football can look like it's extremely glamorous because of the financials that are involved in it. But at the same time, there are a lot of sacrifices and a lot of boring stuff that you have to do in order to be at the level required. I did watch a little bit of the Phil Neville's the women's team recently, the England national team, which was good. They did so well, and it is growing and growing, and it's becoming a lot more like the United States here now, where I think it's the #1 sport for women is football. It's getting more popular. Like I say, crowds are growing, the league's becoming more professional. So it's a fantastic opportunity. And when the girls see the role models doing it and the interest in the game growing, you'll only go from strength to strength. Well, they all sound amazing. I think that's very difficult to choose between. They'll all provide great opportunities and great learning experiences. If you're going to push me on one, I'd probably go to Atlanta. New stadium, I've seen the images of it. It looks absolutely fantastic. They've got obviously a new MLS team there who, I think they won it in their first year, didn't they? Pulling in crowds of like 60, 70,000 in their first year is unbelievable. So you've got the Atlanta Falcons that play NFL out of that stadium as well. I think I'm pretty sure that the owner of the MLS team is also the owner of the NFL team. Got the Atlanta Hawks, the NBA team, great sports city. So that would be the most interesting for me.